29 How I got addicted to Big DK. My last few posts, many have asked me why I'm so crazy about hung men. About 7 years ago, at that time I was already with my current husband, I went to Mallorca with friends. For those who don't know, Mallorca is the place where lots of young adults go in the summer to really party. It's a huge party mile. We were a total of 6 women, and it didn't take long for the first men to start flirting with us. We got to know a group of federal police officers on the very first evening and continued to meet up with them in the days that followed. It was a fun round. One of this group took a special interest in me, and although I was taken, I found that I was very attracted to this man. He was tall, had strong arms, and was otherwise very muscular. His face was handsome and had handsome masculine features. We flirted for a while, and at some point I knew deep down that I had already subconsciously decided that I was going to have sex with this man. He just exerted an enormous attraction on me. It came as it had to come. One afternoon we went to my hotel room together. Our friends stayed in the disco. Already in the elevator of the hotel, I noticed the sexual tingling in my stomach. When we were finally in the room, I felt his lips on mine. He picked me up and pushed me against the wall. I was really impressed with the ease with which he did it. He laid me carefully on the bed and slowly undressed. I watched him, and the less clothes he had on, the more I became excited. He was in great shape. Every muscle seemed trained to perfection. However, I quickly turned my attention to his size. It was perfect, it was long and really very fat. His whole shaft was traversed by small veins that were now pulsing. The sight aroused me. He seemed to notice my look, because he said, "You probably don't get that kind of thing at home." Deep down inside me, my bad conscience arose. I didn't give my boyfriend a thought until that point. But now it was too late for that. I was no longer able to think rationally. My brain was only functioning on animal instincts. And my instincts wanted this hung man. I quickly undressed and realized that he liked the look of me. I placed myself in front of him and re-kissed passionately, while my hands explored his muscular body. I knelt down and took his DK in my mouth. It was incredibly hot. It was the biggest I had up to that point. He moaned slightly, and I redoubled my efforts. After a while, he motioned for me to get up. I lay down on the bed, he bent over me. I could feel this thick jealousness. He slowly began to penetrate me. Even though I was incredibly wet, it hurt a little. I just wasn't used to see DK of this caliber. My friend was a best stocked average. Despite the slight pain, however, the feeling was unbelievable. Courage every inch deeper and penetrated me, my excitement increased. It was an amazing feeling. After a while, his thrusts got faster and harder. I couldn't understand how a woman could endure this procedure for more than 5 minutes without having an orgasm. I tried to pull myself together, not to come. I didn't want him to realize that he had such an intense effect on me. It was useless with loud groans. I came to an intense orgasm. I saw a satisfied grin on his face, and he slowly started to move on. In short, his performance in bed was incredible. I had really intense orgasms, where my whole body was shaking uncontrollably. After my third orgasm, he pulled out his DK and soon grew to big load of CM on my stomach. It was an incredibly hot feeling. In the meantime, of course, my man knows about my experiences. And as you already know from my other stories, I now have his permission to sleep with other men. Unfortunately, I never met the police officer again. If you should read this, get in touch with me, laughing face. Caught has been trying to cheat twice. The first time was 2 years into our relationship, and I really should have just left, but I let him convince me it was nothing and he'd never do it again. We shared a phone at the time, and he'd taken a really young female coworker home from work one night and had been out of communication for about an hour and a half. Didn't tell me what he was doing till he got home, leaving me to panic and send multiple messages with no reply. A few days later, I'd taken the phone with me on a walk so I could play some Pokemon Go. When I was heading back, I swiped up to get rid of the app and spotted a flirty-looking message at the top of his text from an unsaved number. I looked at the texts, and it was 3 solid days of flirting, with her constantly saying She was alone at her apartment and trying to get him to come over. I put the number into Facebook and up popped the coworker he'd driven home, of course. I confronted him and he claimed he had no idea she was trying to be flirty, etc., etc. We broke up for a short time about a year later because he was contributing nothing to the relationship and I was tired of it, and he tried to hook up with both her and another coworker he said he wasn't interested in like that. Fast forward some years later, we're married with a kid. He comes home gushing about another very young female coworker and how she's into the same games as him. Immediate red flag, right? He comes to me a couple days later and asks if it's okay that they exchange numbers, saying he didn't want another situation like last time. I tell him fine, but it makes me nervous. Of course, I find constant conversations between them later on, with her thanking him repeatedly for being there for her and giving her advice and blah blah. Coinciding with nights he was inexplicably late coming home. I met her once when she was giving us some lavish gift for our child and she barely even looked at me. Turns out she was trying to hop from her dead-end relationship into a pre-made family. And since he never talked about me to her, she figured our relationship was dead-end. 2. There's clearly going to be a time when I don't catch this shit and nip it in the bud in time. I should leave, but I honestly just don't care anymore. I don't want to do the whole custody battle thing. I don't really care to date anymore because this is my last straw with men. I don't want to have to split finances as I'm growing a small business right now. Pretty successfully.